Today we will be learning about the Protestant Reformation. At the end of today's lesson, you should be able to identify reasons for the Protestant Reformation and compare and contrast the beliefs of Protestants and the Roman Catholic Church. The Roman Catholic Church was the most powerful organization in Europe during the Middle Ages because the average person could not read or write. This meant that people had to depend on what the church was telling them. Monks would copy the Bible by hand because the printing press had not been invented yet. The Roman Catholic Church taught about purgatory, which was a place that people went when they died if they had unconfessed sins, so sins that they hadn't confessed yet. The Roman Catholic Church sold indulgences. So Pope Leo X, the X means 10, wanted to rebuild St. Peter's Church in Rome, Italy. He led the sale of indulgences to raise money to build the church. So an indulgence is a certificate that's purchased from the Catholic Church that reduced a person's time in purgatory. So purgatory, again, is where people go if they had unconfessed sins. So basically what the church was doing is selling these indulgences and telling people that this was a quicker way for them to get out of purgatory and possibly get to heaven. So Martin Luther, and not Martin Luther King Jr. that we know from the American Civil Rights Movement, but a German monk named Martin Luther, was a priest in the town of Wittenberg. He began to question the sale of indulgences. He said that they were not biblical, that they were not based on anything in the Bible, and he wasn't 100% incorrect because, again, the Pope wanted to raise money in order to build the church and use indulgences as a way to do that. So he began to question the sale of indulgences, and he wrote what's called the 95 Theses. You see that picture on the top right? That is the 95 Theses. He posts them, nails them to a door at the church at Wittenberg. So these 95 Theses are statements against the Pope and the church, and he puts them on the door of the church, which is really bold. So Luther also said that in other writings that salvation, or going to heaven, came from one's faith in God alone. This is called salvation by faith. He said it was not from what a person did, which is what the Catholic Church had been teaching. So the Gutenberg's printing press was created. Remember, monks had to previously handwrite in copies of the Bible. But in 1439, Johannes Gutenberg invented a movable type of printing press. This was an improvement upon the printing press that had already been invented, and it allowed Luther's ideas to be spread to other parts of Europe. It allowed for mass production and printing of the Bible or even Luther's ideas, which led to more people being exposed to these things. So people began to read this and leave the Catholic Church to follow Luther. So Luther gets put on trial by the Catholic Church. The 95 Theses that he posted to the church door made the Pope extremely mad. He was infuriated. He called for Luther to come to Rome, but he was put on trial and was told that he needed to recant his writings. So recant means to take it back. So the Pope is saying, Luther, you said all this stuff. Now all these people have been exposed to it, and we need you to take all that back and tell them that you didn't mean it. Luther refused to do that because he did mean it. So he was excommunicated from the church. That means that he could never come back to the church. He was banished from it. And then he just started his own church, which is called the Lutheran Church. So here's some differences between the two churches. The Lutheran Church believes in salvation by faith. So as long as you believe, then you can go to heaven. In the Lutheran Church, the prince gets to determine the church of the region. There are two sacraments in the Lutheran Church, and those are baptism and communion. Communion is a ceremony that represents the blood and body of Christ. And in the Lutheran Church, priests and preachers are allowed to marry. In the Catholic Church, salvation is by works that are done. So you can get to heaven based upon the works that you have done. The Pope is the head of the church. There are 7 sacraments in the Catholic Church. One of those is transubstantiation. Sorry about that. And priests are not allowed to. There are other denominations of these churches. One of them is Anglicanism. Henry VIII of England started this. He wanted to divorce his first wife to marry his mistress, and divorce was not allowed in the Catholic Church. So he just made up a whole nother church so that he could get away from his first wife and marry his mistress. And he created the Church of England, also known as the Anglican Church. Calvinism is another denomination. A French theologian, John Calvin, in Geneva, Switzerland, created this. In Calvinism, they believe in predestination, like before you're born, you're already predetermined how your life will be lived and if you will make it to heaven or if you will go to hell. And his church is called the Calvinist Church. And then Anabaptism is a baptism takes place for only adults and they live separate from society. Predestination is the belief that God has chosen which souls are destined for salvation before their birth. So this is a map of how the church developed. So you see early Christianity at the top, and Roman Catholic Church and Eastern Orthodox. So there's kind of a split. You can see where the Reformation takes place in 1517, and then how the church just splits more and more as time goes on.